episode of Tough Talk Tuesday. As always, I'm your host, Lucas Biggers. Alongside me will be Jules and Robert. What's going on, guys?
Hey, what's up, y'all?
What's going on, guys?
I'd love to say that we had a great card. Um, the rest of the card actually wasn't all that bad, but the main event was a little bit of a snooze until the end. Um, we're just going to jump into the main event because that's really what everybody's going to care about. We all knew that this fight was either going to be up in the air or somewhat of a demolishing. And when I said that he was going to give up his size advantage, I did not know he was going to give it up completely. Can either of you make a statement as to even Chavez winning a damn round?
But right now is your guys' chance because I talked a lot of crap last weekend. This is your chance to go ahead. Everybody said that Canelo was going to walk away with this one. You know, y'all said knockouts, but it might as well have been a knockout. So go ahead, y'all. I deserve every shot you throw at me this weekend. I'm interested in hearing this because I really made a whole fool of myself last week.
It is pretty bad. I mean, I was ready to give you your own little segment, but you know, win some, you lose some. I guess there, Rob.
Look,
I'll be nice on you.
oh, and I appreciate it, Lucas, but I'm not gonna be nice on them. Look, I'm encouraging all of our viewers right now to do as I did. Yes, I said I did it. I'm not afraid and ashamed to say it. Call your local cable company right now, as soon as possible, and tell them there was something wrong with the fight and you couldn't see the main event. Matter of fact, be careful and tell them that you couldn't see the co-main event as well, because they should know you purchased it for the main event. But go ahead and tell them you couldn't see the co-main event just to be careful and get your money back, so that way you can put it on something worthwhile.
Rob, you're gonna have Comcast and shit calling me.
I don't care. That mess was ridiculous right there. Chavez Jr. didn't even show up. Look, he's known for his choppiness, and I specified this in the article that I wrote. That it was 12-1 at one point for Canelo, and then Chavez Jr. made weight. So then everybody figured we've seen what he's capable of against Andy Lee. Granted, Andy Lee is no Canelo, but we've seen what he's capable of, and then he goes on and puts on a performance like this. And this performance, to me, mirrors that of De La Hoya against Pacquiao, where De La Hoya just refused to engage, did not throw any punches, and looked dismal in that fight. But this is a man we're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, but Chavez is what, 25, 26? This is a man who's young in age, fighting like a damn 40-year-old. I mean, we've seen a better showing from 40-year-olds young in age, with Bernard Hopkins fighting like other people who are past their prime. I mean, we put a better showing than this.
It was a pretty bad showing. I can't put all the blame on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Obviously, there was bad strategy going ahead of time. And that's what I want to ask you guys. Which is the bigger mistake? One, not fully rehydrating like you would to use the size advantage. Or two, Nacho's Berenstein, with all due respect, dumbass plan to try to outbox Canelo.
Go ahead, Jules. You have the floor.
He gave that one up to you, Jules.
You know what? I'm gonna put my own pick, Lucas, my own answer on that. I'm gonna say neither A or B, and go with my own C, and say they were dumb enough to put Chavez Jr. in the ring with Canelo. I mean, let's face it. Chavez Jr. was never in Canelo's league. They did a great job hyping the fight. They did a great job with, can Canelo overcome the size? And that's what we talked about. That's what we wanted to, use as a really good hype job. But the reality is, we all knew it. We're all boxing aficionados. We've been watching Chavez Jr. for a long time. We all knew that he was going to get crushed. And that's exactly what happened. And, listen, I will give Chavez Jr. his credit. He took his beating like a man. I will say that. I did, say he would get knocked down with a body shot. He took the body shots well, early. Obviously, when he felt Canelo's power, he backed off. And I also felt that when he knew that he couldn't hurt Canelo, he knew he had a problem, especially when Canelo was on the ropes and Canelo was giving him shots. Chavez Jr. was hitting him in the body, hitting him in the face. Canelo put his hands down and said, come on. And what did Chavez Jr. do? He backed up. And he knew then, he said, I'm not going to win this fight. And the reality is that, that was the whole thing. I think Nacho Bernstein, he wanted to have a different plan because he knew once Canelo started eating those shots, he said, you know what? You're not going to knock Canelo out. So at least try to use your height and reach. So I'm not going to say Nacho Bernstein's plan was dumb. It just wasn't applicable to a fighter like Chavez Jr., who's never learned how to use his height and reach. And this is their only fight together. It's different with a guy like Marquez, who you've had since, God knows how long, him and Rafael Marquez. But when you have a guy like Chavez Jr., who people have questioned his motivation, has questioned his will to win, has questioned his work ethic, it's just not going to work. So personally, Lucas, to answer your question, he should have never been in the ring with Canelo. But hey, he got $3 million, so I'll give him that.
So here's
but
what
you also have to think. A trainer of Nacho's, God, I can't talk today. Nacho's stature has to know the fighter, and if you know Chavez Jr. like most of us do, as soon as we hear the word outbox and Chavez Jr., everybody knows those two words do not go together.
Oh no, absolutely, Lucas. And once again, I'm not saying it was a great plan. But the whole thing was Nacho, and we all knew it. I said it to a friend of mine I was watching it with. I said, Canelo is toying with Chavez Jr. by taking his best shots. And everybody knew it. Once Chavez Jr. knew he couldn't hurt him, there was nothing else he could do. And I think Nacho knew that too. He said, okay, he can't hurt him. We got to get desperate and see if he can outbox Canelo. Obviously, he couldn't, but we also knew that he couldn't hurt Canelo. Canelo was not in any danger whatsoever. He was in more danger with an old Shane Mosley than a young Chavez Jr., which is saying a lot,
It is.
I would agree. But here's the thing with me, Jules, is I don't feel he couldn't hurt Canelo. He didn't throw enough power punches to be able to see if he could hurt Canelo, and that was evident throughout. Now, my issue with it is the game plan doesn't fit the fighter at all. First of all, the game plan to, just like Lucas said, to sit there and outbox Canelo in the center of the ring. Are you crazy? And using your weight and height advantage anyway is getting the guy to back up into the ropes. So I don't see, and that's what they were telling us, was that the game plan was to fight him in the center of the ring. So to me, that's not using your advantages. To me, that's just a stupid game plan all the way together. My issue is you didn't give yourself a fighting chance by not making this fight competitive. And you didn't make this fight competitive by not engaging period. You let Canelo have his way with you, and he's going to be the quicker boxer. He's going to be the quicker fighter. His shots are going to sting you there a little bit. But his chin held up. Yeah, he was dented after the fight, but he took a lot of shots because he wasn't giving any back. And
But
that's my
also,
challenge with it there.
but you know what? Let me interrupt you there because, and
Sure.
Lucas, I'm sorry to interrupt you as well. I know I'm probably sure you have a point as well. But one of the things we saw about that fight was, and one of the things that I say to myself is, as I get older and have appreciation more of the sport, I can understand when people are saying boxing is more mental than it is physical, right? Because we all talked about the weight advantage for Chavez. We all talked about if Chavez, can throw more and what he can do to Canelo. What we didn't take it into effect rather is what would happen when Chavez Jr. was hitting Canelo with hard shots and Canelo said, "You can't hurt me," and that's exactly what had happened. Chavez Jr. He didn't fold physically, he folded mentally, because that let me tell you something. When Chavez Jr. had Canelo on the ropes and he was hitting him and muscling him, and Canelo put his hands down and returned with combinations and backed Chavez up, Chavez knew he knew he couldn't win. He knew he couldn't win after that because I mean it was Canelo was embarrassing him actually on purpose. He was mentally breaking Chavez Jr. down, as you said, Rob, to not make the fight competitive because Chavez Jr. had him at a position where most opponents would have folded. Andy Lee did, even though he was outweighed. Andy Lee folded. You know what I mean? Sergio Martinez almost went down also. So when Canelo literally took his best shots, had his hands down, and then came back to back him up, Chavez Jr. knew he couldn't win. He knew he couldn't win. He said, let me collect my $3 million, and I'm going to eat a whole bunch of cereal after this is over.
That's a good point. Honestly, that is, Jules. I respect your opinion right there. That is a great point. To sort of back my talk here though on that, it looked like Chavez Jr. was in a swimming pool trying to swing noodles at him. Chavez Jr. hits a hell of a lot harder than that. And then he backed up on the ropes when he did have him. Could it be a fix? I don't know. But he hits harder than that and more frequently, and he wasn't doing it that night.
I've seen a fixed fight, blatantly fixed. I'm not going to say who, but that fight was I mean, somebody can argue and see it, but I think it's really just hearsay. Points where it just didn't make sense. He had him on the ropes. Canelo was allowing him to have him on the ropes. And he was landing, and then he would just let up. Sometimes even without getting hit, but as soon as he got hit once, he would back up. It's like, I'm done. You can go ahead and do what you need to do. Like they're just trading on and off like WWE. And then come to find out, the damn ending was some WWE shit. Played some Undertaker music, and Canelo-Golovkin comes out like he's goddamn Hulk Hogan or something. No, look, I'm all for that. I think theatrics is needed in boxing, and it's a very smart way to sell a fight. I'm all for the theatrics. But the fact that it was pre-planned pisses me off. It's kind of like, hey, we got your $60. Now you're going to have to pay another 60 because guess what? We already planned ahead of this fight. We already knew who was going to win, and you didn't, but you paid anyway.
Lucas, that fact right there is exactly why I went ahead and made the phone call to my cable company. That fact right there. Because the reasoning being is, as being a writer and a follower of this true sport, we know weeks prior to this fight, Golovkin dropped out of the Billy Joe Saunders fight and said he was waiting for Canelo in September. That right there, coupled with the date already being announced, tells you that fight was made already. That fight was already in the books. I have no problem with you making that fight say win or lose, but I have a problem doing it and promoting it so right after the fight that just happened with all those theatrics. I have no, and I said that in the article. I have no problem with a fighter calling out another fighter after they win. That happens all the time. We know that it happens all the time. It is due, but give the fans their due respect. These are people who just paid hard-earned money, not just on the pay-per-view numbers, but at the actual event. And that's who I feel sorry for, because those people piled out of there at the T-Mobile Arena and were visibly upset live on Sports Center.
I mean, as mad as I was about it, and like, man, they got my money. As soon as I thought, well, GGG's End versus Canelo is signed, I got happy again. It kind of made up for it, but not completely, you know? I mean, just the fact that there's that fight out there waiting to happen in September brings me a lot of happiness. But $60 worth of happiness turns into $120, possibly more. It's kind of eating away at my soul. But
So
we're
here,
gonna come back to it and the fight being made, along with some surprising, possibly surprising, depending, gambling odds. But first, I'm gonna go back through the card here. Jojo Diaz, guys, did he impress you? Because to me, I was like, this dude's a future superstar in the sport for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've always liked Jojo Diaz. One of the things I like about him is, he really takes it to his opponent. That's what I like about him. I mean, he's young. You know what I mean? I think he's what, 24? Yeah, 24. He's undefeated, 13 knockouts. He looks good. He looked good. To be honest with you, the guy that he fought was an Emmanuel Avila. He really looked like he had no chance, and you saw it. I like Jojo Diaz. I think he has a bright future in the sport. And I think he won the NABF featherweight title. I would like to see him, with some bigger names in that division. But yeah, I liked him a lot.
yeah,
And go ahead, bro.
yeah, and you said it right, Jules. But the thing that impressed me was, I felt like he had at the level that he's in. I felt like he had a tougher minded opponent in Avila. I thought Avila was little bit of tougher opponent than what he was normally used to up to that point, and I felt like he handled that part of it well. What really impressed me was how young he is, the type of arsenal he had. I mean, he was like throwing some vicious uppercuts. His jab was on
Absolutely.
point and sharp, and the body head work was on point. For him to be such a young fighter and to have that type of arsenal was impressive to me. I definitely want to see him in against different competition, which is another topic right there, because I'm hearing things rumbling through a possible name that he's looking at that's on our radar right now. So I really want to see him get those types of fights. But and another thing that was real impressive to me about him on that card was he carried the fight. When Avila was done, he was hurt, obviously. He really didn't want to have no more to do with them. He stopped throwing punches because he was tired of getting countered. That's when JoJo really stepped up and pressed the fight. So that all those things right there are real good to see from a young fighter like that. He does have some things to work on, though. I feel that he does have a lot of things he needs to work on.
And I mean, he definitely was going tit for tat there for a while. It was, JoJo's round, and all of a sudden Avila's round. It was kind of a back and forth for the first few rounds, and then JoJo hit a gear that Avila didn't have. Once it started kicking up into those late championship type rounds, JoJo let it be known that he was on a different level. I definitely look forward to any fight he has in the future. Definitely
So I mean, and
Go ahead.
that's what I'm saying. I'm hearing from what Roy Jones was saying is they're looking at Gary Russell Jr. possibly next.
That's a nice fight.
Yeah.
Oh man, that is a really really nice fight, and it's a huge test for Jojo Diaz. I think one of the things that we know about Gary Russell is Gary Russell's tough, and he has fast hands. Um, so you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know who to pick in that fight. I might have to sit out that Tough Talk Tuesday, Luke, if they if they make that fight, because I know Rob's gonna immediately ask me what my thoughts are, and I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, it definitely is a huge test going against one of the fastest hands in the sport, if not the fastest hands in the sport. I'm not sure, but I would put him at the top myself. Not just that, but he is a very good boxer. A lot of people might say he lacks a little bit of pop, but with speed like that, makes up for it. And Garrett Russell's looking. I'm kind of surprised he would take that fight. It almost seems like a step down for him, especially when he's trying to go after like Lomachenko's again. Whether those fights happen or not, still to be determined. But we'll have an article soon, actually, on an interview that we did recently. You can always go back through our YouTube channel and check out our interview with Gary Russell. I would love to see that fight. I'm a little skeptical that one happens, but I'd love to see it if it does happen. And Matisse also took on Taylor. I thought it was a great fight. Something was still missing me. I don't know whether it was the killer instinct or what, but Lucas Matisse just didn't seem his old self. Maybe that's a good thing, though. He came back. He still handled business. Do you guys think he's back to his former glory?
I already know what Jules is gonna say, so I'll play the devil's advocate and let Jules go ahead and sing that tune. Go ahead, Jules, sing that tune.
Rob, I'm gonna surprise you. I'm gonna surprise you because I knew you were gonna make me go first. I was ready for this question. You know what, Rob? I know this sounds like a cop out. I don't know. You know what? I don't know. Granted, he looked great against Emmanuel Taylor. In my opinion, he wasn't reckless, but at the same time, he wasn't too careful. He showed glimpses of the old Matisse, and it didn't seem like the wars with Paradnikov and Postol, like it took a toll on him. But at the same time, and no disrespect to Emmanuel Taylor, I think he has a lot of heart, but he didn't really look like he wanted to engage a lot with Matisse. Granted, it is Matisse. We know he's a hard hitter. But Emmanuel Taylor really didn't look like he was looking to engage. And I think that made it a lot more easier, for Matisse to get really dominate, in my opinion, that fight. So I'll be honest with you, Rob. I don't know. Robin Lucas, I don't know. I don't know if he's back to his old self. I mean, those kind of wars, man, that you have back to back, it takes its toll. Matisse has been in some wars. I mean, even going back to Garcia, and believe it or not, that's going to be 4 years this September. So honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. I would hope that he's back. I would hope that he has old glimpse of himself. He looked like a new man with the new haircut. I didn't even recognize him
No, yeah, he looked
when
very
he
different.
you know what I mean, when they put him on. I was like, who the hell is that guy? He's got no hair, and they said it was Matisse. And I mean, he looked fit. He looked fit. He looked in shape. I mean, he really looked good. He looked like the layoff, did him well. Like he was able to recover and is back, to his old self. But I feel like the Emmanuel Taylor fight didn't really show it. In my opinion, Emmanuel Taylor, and no disrespect, he showed a lot of heart, especially with Broner. But he didn't really look great that night. He didn't look great. He really looked hesitant, and it didn't really show what Matisse has when he gets into another tough fight, because that's going to happen, especially in that division. So, I'm to be honest with you, to say it again, guys, I don't know. I really don't know. I hope he's back, but only a tough fight will show us that.
Yeah, I mean, I think really, to me, it is the reckless abandon that he used to have that's no longer there. And Maybe that's a good thing for him, though. I mean, he still came out victorious. Really didn't take hardly any punches. I got to give a slow clap to Taylor's chin, though. He took some shots, including an uppercut. I'm still amazed that he didn't go down from.
Yeah, he's got a lot of heart. I'll give him that.
But Rob, I thought you had a answer to that.
Well, first of all, in so far in the beginning of this year, and a lot of knockout of the year candidates. First of all, I got to give all to that knockout. That was a hell of a knockout for Matisse. So that was real good for him. My thing is Jules, I really don't see that he dominated the full fight the way that I would want to see him do it. My thing is with Matisse, though, I feel like it was a good and bad with Matisse. My problem is that his MO. It's always the good and bad with Matisse. I don't feel like Taylor, the way that he fought that night, should have been able to have the confidence, because his confidence was shot when he was tasting all that power. He wasn't getting off quicker than Matisse. That power does transcend and for him at this weight, and that's the good news for Matisse. But the bad news is that he wasn't completely dominant, and he allowed Taylor the confidence to grow and get back in the fight to where it was starting to become a back and forth battle with Matisse getting an edge in power. And then the knockout happened, which was inevitable to me, because the way Taylor was firing shots back, he was bound to get countered or caught with a shot. But my thing is with Matisse is that's how he is. He's not real dominant. And he lets these guys into the fight, and that's the problem with Matisse. I mean, I can't say that it's that he's not back to where he should be. He's not elite level or anything like that. It is what it is for me with Matisse, and that's a problem, is that he's not real dominant. He doesn't take over these fights, and he allows the opponent to gain more confidence to get back in there.
So you don't think he's back, or you don't think he was ever at the full?
I think it's an Achilles heel for Matisse, is that he likes to fight, but he's not dominant. He doesn't take over. The hunger is there with the killer instinct where he wants to knock you out, but he's at a heavier weight now. That's not going to happen in most of these fights for him right now. Yeah, the power did transcend and he got the knockout, but it's not going to transcend to me to where he can't allow his opponent to get back in there. His defense is his Achilles heel. He's gonna have to do something about that defense, period.
Okay, so if you were asked if Matisse would win a world title before he retires, your answer would probably be no.
At this weight, no.
If he goes down weight?
He's not going to. Sorry, but if he did, yeah, it's a possibility. Or if he go down a weight, he'd be the most heaviest puncher in that division. He'd be able to win the title on his power alone. But at this weight, power transcends, but he's not a world beater. He doesn't win a world title with this weight, no.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on. I know you guys saw the co-main event, which was David Lemieux versus Marco Reyes. Now, guys, to me, I don't think this one should have went the distance. I know Marco Reyes has a great chin, was able to take some brutal shots in there, but at some point he should have been able to get the stoppage, or am I crazy?
No, definitely not. I'm going to be honest with you. I was screaming for a stoppage rounds earlier, and listen, I know it's Cinco de Mayo weekend, got to show that warrior heart, but he was getting the living crap kicked out of him. I mean, personally, I felt like there were times where, the ref, I'm not gonna say look the other way, but he definitely, I feel like he definitely was just like, you know what, he could take some more, because that was a bad. I mean, I would say from maybe the late rounds, man. I mean, Lemieux was beating the crap out of him, and granted, Reyes has heart. I will give him that. But in my opinion, it should have been stopped a little earlier. Lemieux was just punishing him and you kind of see it in Lemieux's face. It really didn't look like he wanted to hurt him some more. And I think towards the ending of the round, I think Lemieux was kind of, taking it easy on him. Not saying that he was carrying him, but I think he was like, you know what, I'm really going to hurt this guy.
Yeah, I mean, but Reyes was able to score. I mean, he was landing some punches at times that even surprised me. I was like, well, he is landing, but I mean, he never really hurt Lemieux or anything. I mean, he was pretty much in control of the fight for the most part, and the scores reflected that 99-90, 99-90, and 98-91. Honestly, if that's the score going into the later rounds and he's still taking beatings, I would probably stop the fight. That's just me. Especially if he hasn't shown, the power to really get the other guy's attention. Hey guys, of course the rumor mill is running around crazy talking about Lemieux Cotto. What do you guys think of that fight?
I think that's a great fight for both guys. Lemieux stock is up. Cotto hasn't been in the ring for a while. He's still a little sour about that loss to Canelo, but he doesn't have that much time. Pretty much, he really doesn't have that much time. He needs a fight in a fighter like Lemieux, who's going to make for an action fight that can be able to press him if he wants to get back at that level to get another, elite level fight before he ends his career. So he needs a fight like Lemieux. I think it's a winnable fight for Cotto. I think it's the best bet for Cotto right now to try to go up against a guy like Lemieux to raise his stock again to get him one last big time fight. I mean, it's do or die for him in that type of setting. So I think it'd be a great promotion. It'd be a great fight. And honestly, I think Lemieux's ready for it.
You're right. I think Lemieux is ready for it. Guys, I don't think Cotto's ready for it. I'm being dead honest. Reason being, he hasn't shown very well at 160, period. And, this fight's going to be at a catch weight. That will be the only way Cotto has a chance. They can't make this fight at 160. And they're not stupid enough to make the fight at 160 because Cotto's going to lose. He is very small to be fighting at pure middleweight. If they can make it a junior middleweight, he has a chance because Lemieux's going to be a little bit drained trying to make that. Because I don't know if Lemieux's even made 154 in quite some time.
Yeah, but I mean, the rumors are he's supposed to be fighting, oh my gosh, Kamagai. Those were the rumors that he was training for, what's his name, Yoshihiro Kamagai for June.
That was that was the rumor before this, though. That was the rumor before Lemieux basically doesn't have a dancing partner. He wanted Canelo. Honestly, they thought, obviously Canelo used him as bait to put him on the undercard. But now the rumor is potentially that he might be destined to fight Cotto, because that's a bigger name than Kamagai, and it's a lot less, I should say Lemieux is a bigger name than Kamagai, and that's a lot less dangerous for Cotto to take on David Lemieux, because if he loses, people can understand.
But at the same time, like, Lemieux's going to fight, 3 times this year? Because, Cotto always wants that June date, unless what they decide to do is scrap June and he fights again in December. I mean, that's a pretty, granted, even though Lemieux hasn't taken punishment, I mean, 3 times in 1 year, that's a hell of a schedule. You know what I mean? So,
but that was already in his plan in taking this fight, being that he wanted Canelo. He took this fight on short notice like this because he wanted to prove he's ready for that elite style fight.
Understood. That makes a lot of sense. I see what you're saying.
And I mean, regardless, I mean, 3 fights isn't too much. I mean, yeah, these, bigger guys like Pacquiao and Floyd, they fight twice a year, and that's all you get. But it used to be guys fought 3, 4 times a year,
Right.
and back in the day, it was even more than that. So it
Yeah,
was
absolutely. I mean, freaking Sugar Ray Robinson fought 3 times in 1 month. You know what I mean? So,
right.
And I mean, let's
um,
face it, that Stevens fight was like worth a half a fight.
Yeah, I mean, it was a brutal fight until the end, but I definitely understand what you mean, Rob. Um, let's go ahead and move back to the fight that was made afterwards. Golovkin Canelo. This was surprising to me, guys. Maybe it's not so surprising to you, but Golovkin actually opens as the favorite.
That is surprising because, like Golovkin even said afterwards, and he's been saying afterwards, even on Sports Center when they interviewed him, Canelo looks good. Canelo looks really good. He looks great, in fact. He looks better than I've ever seen him.
Well,
And
not only that, guys, but the A side is usually the A side for that reason. I mean, usually they are going to be the favorite. So for somebody to be, have their name first on the bill and then be the underdog is funny to me.
it is. But here's why, though. Here's my opinion on why that's the case. Because for the same reason that that 12-1 went down to 4-1 for Junior after he made the weight. People thought that this weight was going to make a difference when he tasted real power, and Junior didn't throw any punches. And Golovkin's going to throw punches. So that's my honest opinion. I feel like people still feel that Canelo's not going to be able to handle the weight.
Jules, do you agree with that?
I can understand where Rob is coming from, and to be honest with you, we also got to realize that Triple G has been crushing people. I mean, that's the reality of it. I think even though Canelo looks good and look good in a way that, in my opinion, looked good against Chavez Jr., I think with Triple G, we've really been seeing what he's been doing on a consecutive basis. I mean, prior to the Danny Jacobs, decision, he was like on like a 22-23 knockout win streak. You know what I mean? It was like he was stopping everybody. And I think that's what people are taking into consideration. And even Danny Jacobs, who, put up a very valiant effort and a great fight, was still a light heavyweight and still got dropped. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole thing about it. Like, listen, I'm not trying to take anything away from Danny Jacobs' performance. I like Danny. I think he did a damn good job. I think, not trying to get off the subject, I think if it wasn't for the knockdown, it could have been argued for a draw. That was how close the fight was, in my opinion. But also, he was 185 pounds. You know what I mean? And he still got dropped. So people are like, listen, Triple G drops light heavyweights. You know what I mean? So I don't care how big Canelo looks or how good he looks. There's a possibility that he may get dropped. And I think that's what a lot of people are saying. Triple G, they're trying to say he looked human in that fight. And I'm saying not really. He fought, the second best middleweight maybe in that division. Another champion, and did extremely well, and once again was at another weight class, in my opinion. So with that being said, people are like, it doesn't really diminish Triple G's status of a hard puncher and as a guy who was aggressive. It only, elevates his status of being a guy who, no matter what weight you are, if you get touched, there's a possibility you're going to go down. And Canelo may be no different.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of fights of Golovkin's have been kind of deceiving. I mean, you get Kell Brook, who was able to actually take some punches, so people don't necessarily see a chin. They see, oh, Golovkin's starting to slip. and then you see a guy hang in there for the complete fight, which hasn't happened with Golovkin in quite some time, in Jacobs. So the fact that he was able to last the whole fight was surprising to them. You're forgetting, like you said, he dropped a 185-pound fighter. On top of that, after the fight speaks volumes. And you could tell just by his actions, by his body language, Jacobs used every ounce of himself in that fight. He collapsed after that. Like, he was done. Just dead exhausted. And
Absolutely.
It took
It was
everything
one
he
of those
had,
fights. Yeah, Lucas, I'm sorry to interrupt. It was one of those fights where if it was, and granted, I'm talking hypothetical, but if it was 15 rounds, he would have had a problem. Like, you know what I mean? That was one of those fights where if he had a couple of more rounds, it would have been a massive problem because you're right. He used every ounce of his energy in that fight. And I think, going back to what you were saying about Kell Brook, it's really the same thing with Canelo and Khan. I rewatched Canelo and Khan before, the triple Canelo versus Chavez fight, and I said, damn, you know what? Khan was actually giving Canelo a boxing lesson before he, ended up, going to sleep, you know. And from a certain standpoint, it was the same thing with Kell Brook. But if you really compare those two performances, it's kind of like really even, right? Because there are a lot of people who say Kell Brook is the better fighter than Khan. There are people who say Khan is the better fighter than Kell Brook. Depends what side you're on. So even those two examples, you can't say who would win because both those guys were, I'm not gonna say, were struggling slightly until they decided to pour it on and put their lights out. So it in my opinion, it's still a 50-50 fight. I can't wait for it. I'm so happy, and I'm glad that the article I wrote, fans can check it out at heavyboxing.com, where I said that Canelo versus GGG might, take the same path as Pacquiao Mayweather, and I'm glad it didn't. I'm really glad we're getting it this year.
Yeah, I'm still kind of in shock myself. Now, of course, we're not going to go over previews just yet. I mean, that's still a ways off, but I do kind of want to touch on some things. Just to touch on the fight, because we are both seeing that they are very competitive and that this fight's going to be very close. Yes, technically Golovkin is still the favorite, but it's practically an even fight in odds. But I want to take it each moment to kind of go over here. If you were the trainer, you could focus on one specific thing we're going to start with Canelo, what would you work on? I mean, clearly he has his combination there and his power, his speed, all that great. But one of you guys take the lead with this. What would you work on, just one specific thing to improve for Golovkin?
Rob, I owe you one, so I'm going to let you take the floor on this because I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Well, the problem here is you said one thing. I think there's many things Canelo needs to work on for a guy like Triple G. But if there's one thing that I would say is key in him fighting a fighter like Triple G is Triple G's going to come forward and apply the pressure. in his best moments, in his best fights, he's applied extreme pressure. So my point of emphasis for Canelo is he needs to throw the jab more, and he needs to make it serious because he definitely will need to try to back up Triple G, and he'll need to set up his shots more. And the jab, many fighters these days abandon the jab for some reason. I have no clue why. That jab is a very powerful weapon. And especially when you're a fighter like Canelo who has to throw combinations and punches and bunches, those combinations are going to have to lead into that jab has to lead into those combinations. And Triple G's perfect for it because he's going to come in. He's going to come in and apply that pressure. He's perfect for the jab to try to set up your offense. And the jab to me is a good defensive weapon because they try to rush in. You're trying to defend him off. That jab makes him think twice about it.
Okay, I like that. It's well stated. For me, myself, I would like to say movement, but I know that's not going to happen in one training camp. and you're not going to change somebody's style. That's not Canelo's style. So what would I say? Defense, but not just defense. He needs to be able to be defensive on the inside. Um, we all know that Canelo can counterpunch, and that's going to be key for him to win. However, he also needs to still be standing on his own 2 feet to win. And what better way to get some inside defense, be able to slip some of Golovkin's punches and retaliate, because he's going to have to get Golovkin's respect. And if he does not do that, is game over from the get-go. But Jules?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. You guys really hit the nail on the head. I can't disagree. With Canelo, I would definitely like to, once again see him improve on his footwork, and I feel like he has. I said that the last show. I felt he's definitely improved from, Mayweather until now. Almost 4 years ago, he's definitely showed his evolution as a fighter. I think, personally speaking, he definitely shouldn't take the same approach he did with Chavez. Do not stay on the ropes because, in my opinion, that's where Triple G would want him to stay on the ropes. And I also think that he needs to. I know this is sound very odd, but I think that he should also develop a very strategic clinch game, because one of the things I've always said about Triple G is Triple G knows how to throw punches and bunches. He knows how to, go to the body, go to the head. He's also very good at shifting his weight while he's punching. So he's a very, very, not just a lethal puncher, but someone who likes to throw volume punching as well when he's ready to step up, as we saw that with like Brook and, even with Gabe Rosado. So I think with Canelo's gonna have to like strategically clinch at times when Triple G's ready to put on the pressure. And that was actually one of the things I saw with Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs knew when GGG was going to turn up the heat, and he would clinch at times. And he would strategically clinch, not to, survive, but to kind of break up the momentum that Triple G usually has when he's about to put a guy into La La Land. And I think that's what Canelo should do. And, once again, as you said, Rob, you pointed it out very well. The jab is the most underrated boxing weapon. Something so simple could be something so, deadly. And I noticed that, when I would watch Manny Pacquiao, as great as Manny Pacquiao is, and he's definitely a Hall of Famer, it would be the simple punch as a jab, that would break his rhythm. And Eric Morales had proved that when they fought, the first time anyway. You throw a jab and, Pacquiao would stop. He would stop the movement, and he would be, suspect to a right hand. And I think that's what Canelo's going to have to do. He's going to have to throw a lot more jabs than he's used to also break, Triple G's record. So, once again, my thing is strategic clinching, footwork, and lots of jabs for this fight for Canelo.
Right. Now, for Golovkin, me, myself, some people probably going to listen to this, call me crazy, call me stupid, what you will. At times, Golovkin gets sloppy, inaccurate, so to speak. So I would definitely work on his accuracy. He cannot afford to be wildly missing any looping, swinging shots, like I have seen him in the past. Now, I'm not saying he's inaccurate. I'm saying he gets ahead of himself, impatient, goes for the knockout, and ends up missing wildly. He needs to be a little bit more controlled in this fight going forward, because if not, Canelo can definitely make him pay. I still think Canelo's power is overrated to what it is made up in the public's mind, but he definitely does have that. We've seen him be able to get the respect of Chavez, put Kirkland out. So, I mean, he can definitely get the respect he needs. I'm not saying that he doesn't. I'm just saying he doesn't have that overwhelmingly one-punch knockout like Golovkin does. But yeah, it's definitely the accuracy and more controlled punches from Golovkin.
Okay. So you turning it over to us now with
Of course, yeah.
Golovkin? So I can't stress this enough. And the one reason why I feel like why I'm more surprised why Canelo isn't favored in this fight. And to me, even defensive wise, because of the type of pressure fighter he is, because of the size, because of the power, I feel like it's not real simple. It's not. It's not anything simple that Golovkin needs to work on. The number one thing to me that I want him to do in this fight, and that I've seen him slipping on in the last fight, when you go up a fight this caliber, and the one reason why Jacobs was able to push the fight and make it competitive, you got to throw punches. You got to. And I don't want him to get to the point to where he feels like he's too nervous or he's too tight or he's afraid of what Canelo might do to counter. That's to me, it's just that simple. I want him to go out and do what he does, seek and destroy, but I need him to throw punches. I need him not be afraid to engage with Canelo because he's the more powerful fighter. I need him to want to get engaged. I need him to want to get into those firefights because he should feel confident enough that he knows he's going to be the one to get out the better in those exchanges. So I need him to just punch and throw punches, everything in his arsenal at Canelo. Even go for the knockout. Hell, I might as well say let's do what you're supposed to do in a big time fight and go for the knockout. If you miss, you get caught, so be it. Get strong enough to get back up.
So basically, you're just saying the opposite of what I just said.
Yeah, because he's a more powerful fighter. Period. He's a more powerful fighter. Canelo to knock him out completely is gonna have to throw combinations and punches and bunches anyway. Why don't you do what you are there to do? Seek and destroy. And like I said, he knocked Jacobs down with one punch. With one punch, and this is basically a light heavyweight standing in front of him. If he wanted to knock Jacobs out, in my opinion, that night he could have. He didn't want to risk it. So that's what I want him to do. I want him to just use his arsenal and try to knock Canelo's ass out.
All right.
Not only that, I want to see that happen too. I will pay all my money to see that happen.
Jules?
Oh man, Rob, Lucas, you guys make it hard for me. I should have went first because I feel like both you guys, are right. Lucas definitely in terms of that. That's one of my biggest gripes against Triple G. He gets sloppy, and one of the things that surprises me is Abel Sanchez. Sometimes I feel like he doesn't correct that. I would think a guy who has championship fighting experience, particularly with guys like Terry Norris, that he wouldn't really let that slide. That he would say, listen, you can't get sloppy in there. And I think that's one of the things that Jacobs really took advantage of with Triple G. Sometimes he would get sloppy, he would come in, go for the knockout, and he would get countered. And if he does that against Canelo, who has shown that he actually is a pretty decent counterpuncher, it may be Triple G who finally gets his lights put out. And I think he needs to be more careful. He needs to pick his shots. Rob, I definitely, understand your point in terms of, Triple G throw more punches. He usually does. But at the same time, I feel like when he throws a lot of punches and he comes forward, that goes to Lucas's point about him being sloppy. So my only, I guess, thing about Triple G is pick your shots, definitely be more disciplined, when you're throwing your punches. And I would like to see a little more head movement from Triple G. I know that I'm not going to say he's going to be the most elusive fighter, but I would like to see a little more, bobbing and weaving. Maybe they should, look at some Joe Frazier, Mike Tyson, videos.
He's a little
Work on that slip ball. try to use a little more head movement because they're gonna need it against a guy like Canelo. They're gonna need it.
Okay. So Lucas, you're saying accuracy.
Accuracy,
Jules,
which he touched on, was basically less sloppiness once he starts getting into some of his rhythm.
Jules, you don't want him to be sloppy, and you want him to use head movement. But correct me if I'm wrong. Do y'all think Canelo can knock him out?
Knock him out? No, I don't believe so. I'm not.
So then
I'm
why?
not speaking for
So then
Jules.
why the hell
Hang
does
on,
he
hang on,
need?
hang on. There's a big difference between knock him out and stop him. There's a difference there. KO, no. TKO, yes. There's a possibility.
Okay, okay. I mean,
I think he
you
can
can't have.
drop it.
Look at Golovkin's face after the Rosado fight. That's my proof he can be stopped.
That he wasn't even in no threat or danger of being hurt in that Rosado fight. Yeah,
Exactly,
I touched
exactly.
his face
That's
up.
the problem. But his face was jacked up, wasn't it?
Okay, okay. I mean, you can't have PKO without the KO. I'm just saying.
Technically, you're right. I mean, I'm leaning more towards the stoppage though, and less of a knockout. Like, I can't see Canelo, putting him with his lights completely out. That's not gonna happen. I don't. That's not even a possibility in my brain. But I could definitely see a stoppage.
Okay, but and both of y'all agree you can definitely see Golovkin knocking out Canelo, can you not?
I can see that. I'm just speaking for me, Jules. You let him decide what he thinks, but I
Jules.
can see that.
You know what? No,
No,
no, no, I can't see it. I mean, I know it's hard for me to say that because I'm also on the Triple G bandwagon, but I can't see it. I think for the last maybe obviously with the Chavez Jr. fight, I feel like Canelo, man, he's got a really really good chin, and I think that I don't see it. I don't think I could see Triple G knocking him out. But Lucas, you made a good point. You were saying a TKO possibly, and the only reason why I say possibly is that Canelo. One of the things that bothers me about Canelo is that sometimes he doesn't fight all 12 rounds, and I don't know if I want to put this on conditioning. Maybe it can be conditioned, and I feel that
I
Triple
would.
G. Yeah, well, yeah. You know what? If we're gonna be technical about it, yeah, it goes into conditioning. And Triple G is the better conditioned fighter. I will say that, and we've seen that plenty of times. Triple G doesn't even look like he breathes hard. After a hard fight, and that may be the problem for Canelo. If he gets tired, he'll get rained on with punches, and then they'll stop the fight. So going back to Luke's point about your with Canelo TKOing Triple G, I can actually see it the other way around. I can see Triple G not knocking him out, but maybe stopping him because Canelo may not be in the physical peak condition that Triple G is. I mean, we've seen the clips of him training at Big Bear. The guy's always smiling. That's high altitude. And this guy's always smiling. Like something wrong with this guy. You know what I mean? you know? So we know who, in my opinion, the better conditioned fighter is, and that's Triple G.
But Jules, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did just say Canelo can knock out Triple G, right?
No, I said I could see him dropping him, maybe getting like a knockdown because Triple G tends to get sloppy, but I don't see a knockout.
Okay.
I don't see him knocking him out. But I said drop him. I could see him getting on the. I could see Triple G going on the canvas. I could see that.
Well, that disappoints me because if you said you think Canelo can knock him out, you're just the guy I need to talk to. We need to make a wager after for this fight then.
Nah, I'm not going that far.
we got to do that closer to the actual fight. We still months away, guys. I know it's exciting, but man, we still a long ways away. All right. Well, it's been a good show. Thank you guys for coming on. I do want to say Uh,
Quick question.
sure.
Quick question, because I really wanted to touch on this for a minute. Yes, I'm going back to these Jules. Does this announcement now make Floyd McGregor less talk about, less wanted?
That depends who you're asking. If you're asking an MMA fan, no. If you're asking a pure boxing fan, yes.
But that's a good question. Let's think about this. How bad would this fight affect Floyd McGregor?
I don't think it's going to affect
Um,
it at all if I'm being completely honest, but Jules.
I mean, I've even seen something today where it said Dana White has said something like they stole their date.
It doesn't matter.
no,
There's
he
not
said
a
that.
date.
He said the yeah. No, he said that date was off. He immediately said that there's no date, and that statement, um, by Dana White, in my opinion, concedes. Yeah, Floyd Mayweather versus McGregor is not relevant anymore at the Canelo versus Triple G, and that's what I tell people all the time when people want to say, matter of fact, Lucas, I'm thinking about an article. Are non-boxing fans actually hurting the sport of boxing? Because it's always the non-boxing fans and the people who aren't well educated about it who want to talk about boxing is dead.
Hmm.
And once again, that proves when you make a big fight announcement, the world stops. And that's what happened with Triple G versus Canelo. Everyone who was an MMA fan, MMA fighters, anyone who's a fan of combat sports, my Twitter feed was going crazy with Triple G versus Canelo finally happened. And that's the reality. The reality is that Floyd, I'm not taking away his accomplishments, but once again, when you give us fights that are all about the money, a real fight is always gonna trump that. Is always gonna trump that. The only fight that would have stopped, Triple G and Canelo being important is if Floyd said, I'm moving up to heavyweight to fight Deontay Wilder. You know what I mean? That's just the reality of it. Floyd Mayweather versus McGregor is not relevant. It's not now. It'll be relevant after Triple G versus Canelo, but it's not relevant. Nobody cares about it anymore. Nobody's going to talk about it. That's a real fight that people want to see, and that's a real fight. That is a pound for pound fight. In my opinion, whoever wins this fight can claim being the pound for pound best boxer in the world.
I agree, and I mean, it's almost has to be a great fight when you look at these two. I don't see there's any way of it being a bad fight. Honestly, I think we're going to see this fight more than once. After this, who are they going to face off again? I mean, you could go to Jacobs because Jacobs did fight Golovkin well, but I think we're going to end up seeing a trilogy probably, and it's going to be a fight to bring boxing back to the forefront. I really think Canelo can bring boxing back into the limelight, kind of steal away from MMA as MMA has been stealing some popularity as of lately. Um, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. I do want to end the show though by saying, obviously, this has a lot of hype. We did create a hype highlight type reel and put it up on our Facebook as well as YouTube. And just our Facebook one has well over 5.2 thousand views already, 80 likes. So it is doing well. Go ahead and check it out there. But as always, thank you, Jules and Rob, for coming on, and join us again on next Tuesday. Have a good night.